All right, welcome everybody back to the Out of Formation Podcast, episode 15. If you're new here or if you haven't already, make sure you like and follow the podcast on Facebook and Instagram and now TikTok. And make sure you are subscribed to the podcast on YouTube and all other streaming platforms. Today is our second episode that we're doing visual, so change some things around just a little bit, but today we got a lot to talk about. If you've already subscribed to the podcast on TikTok or Instagram, I've already talked about the finals a little bit. We're going to get more in depth with that. We're also going to talk about some things going on in the college football world and news coming out of the NFL. So let's get into episode 15. Okay, so first up, let's talk about the NBA finals. So through the first three games, we have the Knicks up 2-1. There's a lot of physicality that's happened throughout this series, but all three games have been close. Every game has been, coming down in the fourth quarter. There's, honestly, this series could be 3-0 Knicks, 3-0 Spurs, and then obviously 2-1 Spurs, but it is 2-1 Knicks. And so, like I said, there's been very little margin for error in the fourth quarter of each game. These teams know how to battle it out when it comes down to the fourth quarter. But the difference has been the Knicks have been able to close at least the first two games, and San Antonio, you can make the argument San Antonio should have won game two. Came down to literally the last shot, Wemby, missing the game winner pretty much. So honestly, it could have been a different story had he made that shot, but it's been a really hard fought series thus far. I mean, the Spurs managed to avoid going down 3-0, which I think the series would have been over in 4 at that point. Honestly, I don't see how the Spurs would have battled back from 3-0 at that point. And in closeout games, the Knicks have been absolutely suffocating. The last 3 closeout games they've had have been won by an average of 40 points, margin of victory. So I think if that would have happened, the Knicks would have just, especially in New York, they would have handled it. But that's not the case. We have a pivotal game 4 that's happening. And so it's still much of what I said last time about it, where the Spurs are playing with a lot of pressure because, they got a game in New York that's great, that I believe they have to take game 4. They have to. There is no ifs, ands, or buts about it. They have to take game 4 and put the pressure back on the Knicks to go back to San Antonio, win game 5, and then try to close it out in New York. Because the Spurs going back to San Antonio down 3-1 is the same way they'd be back to square one, in my opinion, of trying to avoid that 3-0 hole, because now we're looking at them down 3-1, having to defend home court where they've already lost twice, and now the momentum has shifted back to the Knicks. So I think the Spurs have they have the taste of closing out a victory. They're definitely gonna come out and be ready to play, which honestly that was never a doubt. I mean, I think every first quarter in this series, the Spurs have come out and got out to a sizable lead because, they just come out from all cylinders. Wemby's, getting to the basket. You have Castle, who's scoring. You have Vassell and the rest of those guys. They all play excellent defense. So it's not like one or two of them are just defensive experts. They all play really tough defense, and they're able to keep the Knicks, offense away for a moment. But as you've seen I've said, and people have seen in the last 3 games that they've played, the Knicks always find their stride in the second quarter, and then by halftime it's either tied or the Spurs are up by 1 and the Spurs are down when they've started off so hot, just because the Knicks figure out how to get everybody involved. And we'll see if, unlike in game 3, where I felt like they became too Brunson centric, where they were just trying to get him the ball and get the ball in his hands, which I understand that's your star guy. You obviously want your star player with the ball in his hands, but I think that hindered them as a unit, because they work well when they're able to spread the floor, get everybody involved, and get the ball in the right person's hands to make the shot. So, I just think that they need to get back to spreading the floor. That's the best way that they've been able to combat this tough Spurs defense, is to force Wemby and force the other players to have to guard the perimeter as well as the inside, and forcing them to have to jump from the perimeter back inside. And that's how you create mismatches. And that's how you create open shots in the lane and, easy layups. So we'll see if the Knicks are able to get back to that. But also, Spurs got to continue their defensive intensity. They can't let up. They can't let Brunson get off. They can't let Towns get off. I mean, they allowed OG Anunoby to kind of, get going. Luckily, they were able to sustain and, not allow the Knicks to come back fully and take the game over. But they got to continue that tenacious defense. Obviously, they got to get Wemby involved, and they got to get him involved inside the paint. This threes and long jumpers, that's not where he needs to get started. He needs to get started in the paint. He's the tallest guy on the court. He should be getting a lot of in the paint points. He should be getting a lot of points there. And whenever he does, they win typically. And so they have an excellent record from the season and in the playoffs whenever he scores more than 10 points in the paint. So they got to get him involved early if they want to have a chance to even this series up before they go back to San Antonio. But now, I mean, we can get to the, elephant in the room, which is the refs. And I mean, that's a pretty controversial topic when it comes to the refs in this series. I find them very inconsistent. I've said they've been very inconsistent. And as somebody who is not a Knicks fan, not a Spurs fan, I just feel like they want the physicality, but they're not holding it up on both ends of the floor. And I've seen in multiple games where, one team will go on a run and, the other team will start to play more tough defense, and then now the ticky-tack fouls start to get called. Or, we have some, what some people would say, egregious foul calls that don't get called because they're, quote, letting them play. And I'm all for letting them play. Let the guys play ball. Let the players play. But if you're going to let the players play, if you're going to live by that rule, you got to live and die by it. You got to call it both ends of the court. You can't just let one team literally push the other team's players down. You can't let them pull hair. You can't let them be out there pretending this is UFC fight night out there on one end of the floor, and then you want to call a ticky-tack foul on the other end. That's not going to cut it. Refs got to do better. They got to do better. And I just would hate to have the refs decide this series because they can't make even calls. And whether they want to or not, if it's a flagrant foul against Wemby or a flagrant foul against Brunson or Cat or the main stars, you got to call it. Like, I know that was a big topic in this week in the media, was the fact that Wemby has 2 flagrant fouls going into this series. Or no, he has 2 flagrant fouls on the books. The rule is, for those of you who don't know, is if a person gets 4 flagrant foul points, that means if they get 2 flagrant 2s, which equals 4, or if they get a flagrant 2 and then 2 flagrant 1s, or they get 4 flagrant 1s, or any combination like that equals 4, they automatically get suspended for a game. Wemby has 2. The unnecessary push against Jalen Brunson, that's most likely a flagrant 1. And that would have put him at 3 flagrant fouls. So now people think that there's some sort of agenda here with that, because Wemby gets 3 flagrant fouls. He kind of has to be careful with how he kind of approaches his defense and how he approaches the game, because if he gets called for another flagrant 1, he's out. He's out for a game. And obviously, for the best competition possible, you don't want Victor Wembanyama to be out of the game. But at the same time, I'm like, you got to call it. You got to call it. If he's pushing players down and it's away from the play and has nothing to do with anything and it's excessive, you got to call it. Like, I get that you want him to be the star. He's going to be a star. He's going to be a star. But to ignore that, and for the league to send a message saying, well, we're not going to upgrade it to a flagrant 1. We're not going to do anything. It's giving him license to do something else that he could possibly get called a flagrant 2 on. And then there's nothing you can do about it. He's gone. And so I just think that, calling it a flagrant one wouldn't have done anything to him. It would have been a very small fine. I think a couple $1,000s, literally a couple $1,000s, and nothing else. It just would have been, he would have had to be careful in what he does and not get out of hand. So I'm just hoping that moving forward, the refs are actually going to decide to be a little bit, either lean more towards the let them play or be more strict with the foul calls. Either way, that's fine. It's perfectly fine to me as long as they pick a side. Like if you're gonna call it, call it. If you're gonna call it both sides. It's simple as that. But like I said, keys to the series, the next game, Knicks have to be able to weather the storm. The Spurs are going to come out firing because they have the momentum. It's about weathering that storm and being able to play your game, spreading the floor, making your shots, getting the ball into the right people's hands, and being able to force the Spurs to work harder on defense to where they don't have as much energy and passion on the offensive floor to put up shots. For the Spurs, continue to get Wemby involved, continue to have that tenacious defense, get Wemby involved inside early to make sure that you're able to establish that presence inside. So Wemby has to be able to score points inside versus the Knicks, who are going to play tough defense against them. So again, I'm so excited to see how this series is going to shake out. Game 4 and then obviously Game 5, and see how those two games, how these two teams kind of approach this series now that the Spurs have gotten a game and now it's seemingly a series. So yeah, I'm going to be looking forward to that and really just kind of see what each team is going to be doing. All right. So now we're jumping to the NFL. So my Chicago Bears, I'm a huge Bears fan, but my Chicago Bears, their board recently decided to move ahead with the building a location, a new stadium in Hammond, Indiana. So what does this mean? So the board and the Bears organization has decided to, take that plot of land in Hammond, Indiana, and, the plans are to, break ground and, build a stadium there. That's the current plans right now. Now, does that fully mean that the Bears are moving to Indiana? It's a lot more serious now than it was before. Now it's just not conversation. There's actually a vote that took place, and there's now plans that they're moving forward with the Hammond, Indiana location. With that is, obviously don't want to lose the team, but the city of Chicago and the state of Illinois really didn't leave the Bears a lot of choice. I mean, from what I've understood, the organization tried to bend and mold and try to meet the mayor and the state of Illinois, and they tried to kind of meet them halfway. And things didn't really work out. And, there's been a lot of conflicting reports on, did the governor meet with the president of the Bears, Kevin Warren, and how those meetings went. And then the state of Illinois government is not voting on whether they are going to assist the Bears in funding the new stadium that was going to be built in Arlington Heights, which they completely abandoned the idea of renovating Soldier Field where it is in the city of Chicago. They decided it was either going to be Hammond, Indiana, or the Arlington Heights situation in Illinois. And they just weren't able to come to an agreement, they weren't able to come to an agreement on that location and moving forward with that. So, I mean, the governor of Indiana swooped in and, kind of moved some things around and made a deal that was very appealing to the Bears organization. And it looks like the Bears are moving to Indiana. And now a lot of people have, really been talking about the backlash from it and, are they going to change their name to the Indiana Bears and things like that? And I mean, if you look at the map, Hammond, Indiana is really very, very close to the Indiana-Illinois border. I mean, it's not that far. It's about 40 minutes away from Soldier Field currently. And the business sense, I mean, it's just cheaper for them to go forward with that location. But I mean, some fans are totally against it. No, the Bears should stay in the city. The Bears should stay in the city. And I get that, but I mean, we have the Bears have a very old field. And I mean, it was last renovated, I believe, in 2003, if I'm not mistaken. And that's the year that the Bears had to play, I think, at the University of Illinois. But yeah, so it was renovated in 2003. It's the turf has been the grass has been a problem for years, and it just wasn't going to be feasible going forward. And that's why they were moving to Arlington Heights, which I had no problem with, because I mean, there are so many teams that literally don't play in the city that they are representing, and that's fine, because the thing is that with a lot of these newer stadiums, they can't fit in the city. Where in New York are they going to put a big, massive stadium? That's why the Jets and the Giants play in New Jersey. There's more land. You have to think about this. Soldier Field was built before a time that the city of Chicago was as big as it is now. So you had a big land, you had land like that to actually build the stadium, and, parking and things like that. Like you had land to do that kind of stuff. But as you can see with a lot of these newer stadiums, they go outside the city. I mean, Vegas just built a stadium. Where is it? Not in Vegas. It's not in Vegas. It's outside of Vegas, because there's a lot of land. And what most teams are doing now with that is they want to create a whole immersive experience. Hotels, businesses, restaurants, they want to build it up to its own kind of smaller, I guess you can call it. But I guess one of the few teams that are able to build a new stadium within the city is the Titans. The Titans are literally building their new stadium right next to the old one. I mean, I believe the Bills are doing the same. The Buffalo Bills are doing the same thing. But a lot of these newer stadiums are outside of the city that they represent, and it's fine. But, people obviously are upset about the prospect of the Bears leaving not only the city of Chicago, but the state of Illinois, and being in Indiana, and that would give Indiana 2 NFL franchises technically within the state. And my thing is that it's not over yet. I mean, there's still a chance that the governor of Illinois and the state government can make a play to keep them there and at least get them to Arlington Heights, especially, the fact that they're not going to keep them within the city of Chicago. At least they can push them out to a Illinois state suburb to, kind of still keep that team within the state, So, I mean, like I said, we'll see what happens moving forward, honestly. But as of right now, it looks like the Bears are moving to Indiana, not anytime soon, but it looks like it's going to be happening in the future. So, unless the governor of Illinois and the state government come to a vote or do something, Bears are leaving the state. So as a Bears fan, I was kind of torn from it. I was kind of torn between oh my God, I don't want them to leave the state, versus this would be a lot better experience for the fans and as well as the players, because I'm sure the field would be a lot more well maintained, and the actual stadium, I haven't been to Soldier Field in a while. It's been, I was way younger, but even still, it wasn't the most up to date at all. And so, you hate to see them leave, but at the same time, you see that it's a business. You see these other teams building domes because they want to host a Super Bowl. They want to host other events. Chicago, the Bears organization, no different. So, like I said, it could still change, but as of right now, Hammond, Indiana, here we come. All right, so more football news. This one's coming from college football. An ongoing situation with University of Cincinnati Bearcats quarterback Brendan Sorsby. This situation I've been following has been it seemed to be a very cut and dry kind of story. I mean, if you don't know, University of Cincinnati quarterback Brendan Sorsby was found guilty of placing bets, I think totaling in $9,000 on several different games over the season, over the college football season. So he's betting on college football games. And so obviously you can't do that. And he was suspended. I mean, and he made an appeal, and he's literally still in the appealing process, but early word is looking like he's only going to get suspended for a short amount of time and be able to come back, is what the early news is from that, which I'm looking at it like, that's not sending the right message to me. It's not. I mean, if this news is really true and he's able to, appeal this and have a small suspension and being able to resume football, is that the right message you want to send? I mean, albeit he did rehab for, gambling, and he's taken steps to show that he's trying to improve. But at the same time, betting on games that in the league that you play has always been a huge no-no. Huge no-no. You can go back to Pete Rose back in baseball. Like, he was banned for life from Major League Baseball because he was betting. And that kept him out. He was a great player. That kept him out of the Baseball Hall of Fame for years because he was found betting. They kicked him out. He was not allowed back. Lifetime ban. Lifetime ban. The NFL, there was a couple of NFL players. There was one incident, I forgot the names, but it was the Atlanta Falcons and the Detroit Lions. A couple of their players got found betting. They're out. They got suspended, and it's like they were betting on NFL games, but on top of that, it was in the facility. It was on NFL property, like it was on organization property. I mean, I'll go even further than that. There's in the NBA, a couple of coaches and players that got suspended and fired because they were betting. And to me, like, if you're betting on games and you play in that league or you coach in that league that you're betting on, what's stopping you from point shaving? What's stopping you from altering the outcome in your favor? That's why the sports betting is so serious. That's why they take those allegations seriously. That's why they take that stuff seriously. And that's why normally you're kicked out, you're gone. Because the fact of the matter is that you can't bet. You can't bet on games that you're in. You can't bet on the league that you can bet. You could be a NFL player. You could bet on baseball. You could bet on basketball. You bet on any other thing other than your games and games in which insider information. I mean, you're sitting here betting on league games where hey, you can text a fellow player, be like, hey, are you playing tonight? Oh, no. You see the conflict of interest. So when it comes to Brendan Sorsby, I know that he is appealing and things like that, and he wants to come back, and I get that he's taking the steps admitting that he has a gambling issue, but at the same time, it's like, how often is that going to happen now? And how often it is already happening? Because the fact of the matter is, he got caught. How many other players are doing this? How many other players are doing this? And it's like, you never want to be allowing these people to bet, and then it leads to them or somebody outside, a third party that can put pressure on somebody to change the outcome of a game. Plain and simple. So realistically, he took the chance of betting, and he knew the risk. And the risk is, I could be kicked out of school. I could be kicked off the team. And I feel like that should be the punishment. And I mean, some people may say I'm too harsh, but I just don't understand why that's one of the things that I feel like has been made abundantly clear. Like, hey, don't bet on games. It's a simple thing. Like, don't do it. And it's like, choosing to do that means that you don't care about the consequences or you don't think you're going to get caught. And so when you do get caught, you got to face consequences, and the consequences for betting on games in the league that you play in, and especially, on games that you play in, is you get booted out. That's it. You're done. There is no coming back. I mean, and like I said, he has the right to appeal, but if they do manage to let him back in, there has to be more of a concerted effort to keep a very watchful eye on him, because as a starting quarterback for a college, he has to be that leader. And he plays the quarterback. This is the biggest leadership position on the field. He has to be that leader. And it's like, how can we trust you if you're making these bets? How do we know you're not going to all of a sudden decide to not throw that wide open touchdown and be like, oh, I gotta hit the money line. I'm going to throw this ball out of bounds. So it's one of those things where I go back to what I've said in previous episodes with like the NCAA relay. They have to make these rules and keep what they are. Like, with the betting and NIL, they got to figure out what the rules are going to be and stick to them. So, we'll see how this mess is going to get cleaned up and if Brendan Sorsby is going to get to play. So, I don't know. All right, guys, what a wonderful show we've had today. Episode 15 I thought it was great. We talked about a lot of good stuff. Like I said, I'm going to keep doing updates on the finals, the World Cup, anything that's going on in sports news, and just keeping you guys updated. Next week, I will have a story for you guys. I know that it's been a while since I've done a military story time. Sorry about that. There's been a lot going on in sports that I've had to kind of get to, and trying to get the first video episode out. But next week I'll have a story for you guys, as well as a lot of updates in sports. But as always, thank you guys for tuning in to episode 15 of the Out of Formation podcast. Like I said, if you haven't already, make sure you are liked and followed and subscribed and everything else to the podcast on social media. Make sure that you're following the podcast on YouTube now and all of the streaming platforms to get all of the up-to-date information about the pod and when the next episodes are coming out. And I'll be giving brief analyses of, like I said, the finals and the World Cup on TikTok. You can follow me on TikTok at GibbsT1Fit on TikTok, and obviously Out of Formation Podcast on Instagram and Facebook. But as always, guys, God bless you, God loves you, and I'll see you guys next time.